Hey, you're gonna have to leave. You're gonna distract me way too much. The PS5 and Xbox Series have been really, really awesome ever since their launch. And if you just look here, it doesn't take a genius. These consoles are selling very, very well. It starts to bring some fear into the PC gaming market. Are these consoles just better than computers? And is PC gaming going to die because of it?
First, they're going to use the consoles kind of in a rudimentary way, basically just cranking up settings of last-gen games, but they really can move data, like, fundamentally more efficiently than the PC.
Well, it's really important to take note about everything that makes up these consoles and the reason why they are very good value to basically the average person, the average gamer, to be a little bit more specific. Specs on the PS5, for example, you get a CPU that is an 8-core Zen 2 CPU, and then you get a GPU, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of like a 5700 XT from AMD to like a 6700 XT. And then you get 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 RAM, which is very fast RAM. And that RAM is shared between the CPU and the GPU because this is an APU that we're working with here. And it is all wrapped up into this really nice package that we call the PS5, otherwise known as the Wi-Fi router. Here's this guy, the fridge. I mean, AMD designed both of these systems, and they have a very similar CPU in them. The GPU in it is supposed to be a little bit faster, probably because it also clocks faster. GDR6, 16 gigabytes, but it's on a 320-bit bus. It's probably the same on the PS5, but that is a pretty big bus for memory, all things considered. Memory bandwidth of about 560 gigabytes per second on 10 gigabytes of it, on 6 gigabytes of it at 336 gigabytes per second. So the 6 gigabytes are probably for the CPU end, and then the 10 gigabytes are probably for the VRAM, I would think. All wrapped up in the package of $500. Pretty good deal. I mean, finding a $500 gaming PC with those specs is just pretty much not possible. I built up a PC here on PC Part Picker that would be a similar processing power to these consoles. That total is coming out to $942 plus the cost of that cooler, so about $980, and then getting, I don't know, you could get a Windows key on another website for like 25 bucks. I mean, you're looking at about $1,010 for this system just to match the performance of a PS5 or an Xbox Series. So about double the price in total. But the dollar value being half the price or even less than half the price of an equivalent PC on the consoles isn't the only compelling feature that they have, because consoles have some things inherently that are just better than PC. One of those things is that GDDR6 memory that I mentioned earlier. It's unified memory for this APU. And that means that you have really low latency and it's soldered to the board, so also keep that in mind, which just makes things very, very snappy. And Moore's Law is Dead did an awesome conversation with a game developer.
The consoles know that they have a certain speed SSD, a certain amount of RAM, so they can stream it in and out as needed. Yeah. It knows what it's using. The shaders are pre-compiled.
Compared to a PC, which could have millions of combinations that you can't really account for them all. It can be very hard on game developers to try to optimize things for everybody, especially when the latest tech is pushing features to the extreme, especially with VRAM.
Mm-hmm. So it's like with everything, a trade-off. And even for me, trying to stay below the 8 gigabyte target, we have to do so much work to make it happen.
One of those really cool advantages that is starting to surface on consoles is direct storage. And that is taking all the data from the SSD, instead of loading it to like system memory, having the CPU having to funnel it to your graphics card. The graphics card just gets those things sent directly to its memory, and then it can feed off of the textures and everything that are in it. That direct storage will decrease loading times and possibly decrease the amount of memory that needs to be used. Everything is standard, and they can move data so much faster, which makes things like direct storage be way more easily enabled on consoles compared to PC, which we're seeing a very, very slow rollout, and the only game that we've only really seen it in is Forspoken, and I don't think it made that much of a difference.
The guy told me, from what I'm seeing, direct storage, if you're doing what the PS5 can do, which is stream in assets while you're playing, storage means you have to use the graphics card. So they're seeing a 20% hit in performance when you're streaming and rendering the game, and then there will be stuttering with the 20% lower performance. So if you want to remove stuttering, you might need to go to 30 or 40% performance hit, because, well, it's doing the work of a graphics card and an entire IO system. Like, that may just be a thing on PC where they're like, you might need double the teraflops to make up for the fact that you don't have these IO controllers or something.
That is one of the reasons why you see the sales numbers on consoles and you see the standardized hardware And it's obvious why developers focus their games on consoles first. We've seen in recent releases on PC, they've kind of been an unoptimized mess, especially with VRAM usage. But on consoles, even though they only have 16 gigs of RAM total in their system, that factor may seem limiting, but it doesn't seem to be as important as it does on PC. PC, you end up storing a whole lot of extra data because you're not sure how things are going to perform.
If we really want to do what the PS5's doing, but of course do it in 4K instead of in 1440p on the console, we probably need 32 gigabyte graphics cards.
Developers can optimize way more for consoles in a way shorter period of time. This leads to things on PC almost seeming like they're over-spec'd compared to consoles. Like 16 gigabytes of RAM on consoles, that doesn't sound like that much. But on PC, that sounds like almost nowadays what people want to be the minimum amount of VRAM, not even the system RAM, just the VRAM on graphics cards nowadays. So it seems like under completely like maxed out load, it draws around 340 to 350 watts, but while gaming, it seems to draw about 200 watts, which is really efficient, especially for the performance that it can put out. Compared to the system that we made here, that seems like it has about 390 watts of power draw. That'd be under complete load. I would think probably around, I don't know, 300 to 350 while gaming. But you're saving like 100 to 150 watts using a PS5 or an Xbox Series console. Because it's an APU, having the CPU and GPU attached, how powerful that can be. We can even see with ARM architecture nowadays, it makes things way more efficient. Not only do you only need one cooling solution in your system, APUs, they're so closely knit. The closest that we can see in the PC market is like the 5700G, and it had decent APU performance, but we've never seen anything as powerful as like a console's APU on PC. This leads me into something that may be a little bit unconventional, and I don't think I would be even on board with this, but I could see a market for this, and that would be a hybrid of a console and a PC. Imagine a company, I mean, how much do you want Microsoft to do this? But say Microsoft, or Valve for that matter, making a computer that has all standard hardware. This computer that is built by these companies could be seen by game developers and almost treated like a console on PC if it gets enough support by the consumer. But you'd be running on like Windows, and then you'd have all the power of having a computer, because that is one of the apples to oranges things that people don't always talk about with consoles versus PCs. And you're not just getting a console that can only game, you're getting a full computer that could do anything from video editing to 3D modeling to making music to browsing the web to really whatever you want. But in order to make this happen, and the reason I mentioned Microsoft and Valve is because they're already integrated into the PC gaming community. You would want to sell these computers if they're like anything like a console. If you know, Microsoft and Sony both lose money, generally speaking, on a sale of a console. They cost way more to manufacture than they actually charge the consumer, because they hope to make things back with like PS Plus and Xbox Gold or Xbox Game Pass, or just game sales on the PlayStation Store or the Xbox Store. So a company like Microsoft or Valve, Steam, would have to be in this so that they can make money back in the long term. It's very similar to something like how Valve has done the Steam Deck, which my friend actually came over recently. He has a Steam Deck. I was like, oh my God, dude, that thing is cool. And Steam already kind of stepped out of their bubble when they made the Steam Deck. It's sold over 1 million units up to this point. It's been wildly successful for what you'd think would be a niche product. And that's because they're able to price it low, expect gamers to pay for games on Steam, and then they make that money back in the long term. And it's even been recently released that Steam doesn't want to upgrade the hardware in the Steam Deck for years because they're treating it like an actual console, and they want developers to be able to optimize for the Steam Deck specifically. So having this hybrid PC console thing from one of these big companies could solve a lot of the problems that PC has, and that's the wide range of possible hardware configurations. There's possible ideas that Microsoft is going this direction with the Xbox Series consoles, and maybe the next generation might be almost just Windows on an Xbox, who really knows. With the Xbox Series consoles, they've just shown that if it releases on Xbox, it releases on PC as well. And they're bringing all of their services like Game Pass, and I think they did have that cloud gaming thing. I don't know if that still exists now, but all of those things have been brought to PC. So it almost makes you wonder, why would you buy an Xbox when you could do the same thing on PC? So is Microsoft already going in that direction where they want to make a console that you could just buy and it just runs Windows? I can already see people mentioning how Steam has already tried this, and they've made Steam machines, which were basically pre-configured computers, all with the same hardware in them, trying to deliver the same performance, a standardized price, and try to get people in a more simplified way into PC gaming. Problem with these is they weren't cheap enough to compete with consoles, for one, and for two, they were using off-the-shelf hardware, which didn't really give them any advantages over a PC. Linus did an awesome video where they actually took apart a Steam machine and tried to figure out what made it tick. They just had a full-fat NVIDIA graphics card just sitting in the system. It's very, very odd to see. But I also don't see Steam being the one doing this. I think Microsoft is probably going to be the one, if this happens, to make the hybrid console PC. Because Steam has invested so heavily into Steam OS, and Steam OS is primarily a gaming OS, kind of like how Sony's PlayStation OS, and even though Xbox Series' OS is very similar to Windows, like how it's built up, it's still proprietary. But it's very interesting to think, especially with APUs on consoles, with their semi-custom design from AMD, they've become really powerful and power efficient. That is this way of making a computer the future. And it's hard to believe this is going to come anytime soon, because AMD, for example, just launched their 7000 series CPUs, and those motherboards and everything, they're trying to stay on this AM5 platform for a decent amount of time, like they did AM4. It's unlikely to happen soon, but it might be in the future that we would see APUs being the central focus on PC. So some of that customizability, would you have to buy a motherboard with everything soldered onto it, and then you're stuck with what you have, kind of similar to how Apple has done their M series chips up to this point. I mean, you can't replace anything on it. It's a system on a chip. Would we turn to something like that for PC? Could you buy like a motherboard that just has everything in it? $500 board that has your GPU, your CPU, your RAM, and your whole motherboard built into one, and then it gave you performance that it would be more powerful or similar to like a PS5 or something like that. Is that the kind of future that we're going to? Or maybe even an option, especially on the budget range of things considering. Because all of that would obviously be cheaper for the consumer, because you get to save on all the marketing costs from every single piece of the computer. You get to save on all the packaging and possibly shipping costs that would all be. You don't have to ship a graphics card, a CPU, a RAM, and a motherboard. You can just ship one motherboard that has everything on it. And this could all be done in the same factory. This generation of consoles has been very technically impressive and has provided better value than what is on PC. But I will say, usually in the first few years that consoles come out, especially because Microsoft and Sony are selling their consoles at a loss, it's really hard to build a PC that comes anywhere close to it in price. So usually in a few years after they launch, you can get about the same price to performance within a couple generations of the consoles. So that is something to take into consideration if you're dooming the PC market. But they're looking pretty good right now. If you're just focused on gaming, you don't care about other things that you get on a PC, you should get a console. You guys decide. And I'll see you guys in the comments and the next video. Peace.